In the last lecture, we have seen how to measure the height of a workpiece using the master gauge block set using phenomena of interference of the light. We also discuss the NPL, how to check the flatness using optical flats, how the various surfaces look under the optical flat that we have seen. Then we discuss the interferometer, the principle of working of the interferometer, various parts of the interferometer, and how to check the length or how to check the flatness using the interferometer that we have seen. So this is a NPL flatness interferometer. We have discussed this NPL flatness interferometer, how it works, and these are the different fringe patterns that we get using the NPL flatness interferometer, and we have discussed these 5 different situations or 5 different surfaces. So there is a particular pattern for each surface. So the gauge top surface may be flat, it may not be flat, so it may be say convex, it may its corners may have worn out, it may have taper along the longer edge, it may have taper along the shorter edge. So 5 different surfaces of the top of the gauge and their corresponding to that surface, their fringe patterns, how they will look like, that we have discussed. So just by comparing the 2 different fringe patterns, we can easily correlate that surface pattern with the type of the surface. Okay, then we can after that we can easily find out the error in parallelism that can be found out by using the optical flat. So if this is the optical flat, we can find out this error in parallelism. So let us say this is position 1, okay, in which the optical flat is like this. Okay, optical flat is like this. So here distance here, as you can see, face AB is nearly parallel to the optical flat. So this face and this face, they are nearly parallel. Okay, they are not exactly parallel, but this distance delta 1 can be found out, so that that face can be parallel to AB. Okay, so this AB and optical flat can be parallel, so this much distance is required, so that delta 1 is nothing but n1 lambda divided by 2, where n1 is the so because of the air gap between optical flat and this say particular component, you are going to get a fringe pattern. And if we count the number of adjacent fringes, let us say it is a n1, so in that case that this height delta 1 will be equal to n1 lambda by 2, okay, where lambda is the wavelength of the light. Similarly, if the table is turned through 180 degree, so that will be the position 2, this is position 1, A is on left side, B is on the right side. Now the table is rotated through 180 degree, now B will be on the left side and A will be on the right side. The position of the optical flat is not changed. Now as you can see, this face is not parallel to this surface at all, so this height is increased, isn't it? The air wedge, the gap of the height of this air wedge between optical flat and this surface is more as compared to this situation. So accordingly we will get more number of fringes because the height is more, and we know that more the height, more will be the fringe. More is the height between the surface of the object and bottom surface of the optical flat, more number of fringes will be seen. So let us say that the such number of fringes are n2. So this delta 2 will be n2 lambda by 2. Okay, and we can easily find out the error in say parallelism. So error in parallelism will be delta 1 minus delta 2 divided by 2. Why divided by 2? Because we have rotated this position. So whenever we rotate the position, rotation of this base circle amounts to the doubling the effect of error in parallelism. So it doubles the error in parallelism. So whatever difference you have got, it is equivalent to 2 times the error in parallelism. So actual error in parallelism will be difference between the two readings, that is a delta 2 minus delta 1 divided by 2. Why divided by 2? Because the reading shown by this particular system will be double. Okay, so we can easily find out that value. So same is shown here. Then there is a one more interferometer. In the previous case, this whatever interfere we have seen, it is a flatness interferometer. Remember that it is a NPL flatness interferometer. Now there is one more interferometer, that is called as a NPL gauge interferometer, or it is a Peter NPL gauge interferometer. So here in previous case we had found out whether the surface, the gauge surface is flat or not. That we had discussed. Now in this case, here it is assumed that the gauge surface, the top of the gauge surface is truly flat, fully flat. Okay, its edges are perfect. Okay, they are not tapered, they are not worn out. So the bottom surface and top surface, they are parallel to one another, they are truly flat. So now the objective is to find out this height. We have to find out the height of this gauge with respect to this base plate. So we have to find out the distance between base plate, this line, and top of the gauge. That we have to find out. Okay, now for this this is a Peter NPL gauge interferometer. So it is used to find out the actual length of the gauge. Remember that, don't get confused between flatness interferometer and gauge length interferometer. Okay, so you have to just check at in the examination, during the examination you have to check which interferometer is actually asked in the exam. If you have been asked the NPL flatness interferometer, then you have to describe that only. And if you are asked NPL gauge length interferometer or Peter NPL gauge interferometer, then you have to explain this interferometer. If you make the confusion, and if you have been asked flatness interferometer and if you explain the gauge length interferometer, you will get 0 marks. Okay, so that thing you have to keep in mind first. Now here a schematic diagram of the interferometer is shown. The source of the light used in the instrument is either mercury or it can be a cadmium lamp. So this is the source of the light. So you can use the mercury or cadmium lamp can be used. Each of these lamp gives maximum of the 4 wavelength. It is not a monochromatic, so maximum 4 lengths are there. So whatever color, whatever wavelength you want, that can be used. That provision is made. So mercury lamp gives 2 yellow, 1 green and 1 violet light, while the cadmium gives 1 red, 1 green, one blue and one violet light. So whatever light you want, you can select. Then the light from the lamp after passing through the condensing lens, this is the condensing, the light passes through the from light source to the condenser source, then it goes through the slit, so that it gives intense source of the light, and that will go to the collimating lens. So this collimating lens will convert your ray of light into parallel rays of the light. That will be done. So here it will act as a parallel beam. So this the light from the collimating lens, it falls on a constant deviation prism. So you can see here, this itself is called as a constant deviation prism. It is a different type of prism, remember that from the previous one. So this constant deviation prism can be rotated in such a way that each wavelength can be independently used. Okay, so that is the objective of constant deviation prism. So as I told you, this source of light can contain 4 wavelengths, the rays of the 4 different wavelengths. So whatever wavelength you want, that can be selected using this constant deviation prism, so that it can be used independently. Whatever wavelength you want, you can select it. So one of the beams selected by the prism, that is focused on this gauge to be tested, as well as on the this table, base plate table. Okay, so now the inclination of the optical flat can be adjusted in planes such that the interference fringes can be seen in any direction. Now as we discussed in last case also, we are going to get 2 sets of the fringes. One set of the fringe is because of the air gap between optical flat and top of the gauge. Okay, surface of the top of the gauge. So this air gap between this and optical flat, so that will be one set of the fringes, and that will be shown in a rectangle. Then we will see another set of fringe because of the air gap between the optical flat and the base plate. So because of this air gap, we are going to see one more fringe pattern. That fringe pattern will be shown in this circle. Now the fringe pattern will be seen like this. Okay, now we know that you can see this is a field of view of the fringe patterns. Now we can see that we have already said that this whatever gauge we are using, it is absolutely flat and parallel. So interference bands from the gauge top and the base will be of the same pitch. This we have already discussed, that when the surface is perfectly flat, the pitch of both the fringe patterns will be same, as well as direction will be same. Direction is also same, horizontal direction, and the pitch of both the fringe pattern, that is also same. Okay, so this spacing and this spacing both are same. So as we can see now, the only thing is that both the fringes, the relative positions are of the fringes, they are going to be displaced from one another. As you can see, the fringe of B, the fringes due to the base plate are displaced from the fringes due to the gauge. Okay, so let us say this distance is A. So a relative displacement of B with respect to A is given by the ratio F, which is equal to A by P. This is called as this is the ratio by which the bands of the gauge top, okay, bands of the gauge top which are shown in the rectangle are displaced from the bands of the instrument base. Okay, so that can be found out, isn't it? So this condition is going to be there. They are not going to be aligned at all. It is not possible to align now. So this fringe spacing f is equal to a by b, that will be different for the different wavelength lights, isn't it? Now let us see how the actual interferometry takes place, or how to measure the actual gauge length in this case. So you consider how the gauge length is calculated. So to calculate the gauge length, you consider a pair of fringes. This is a set of as you can see, this is a set of fringes is there. So in this set of fringes, one set of fringe is shown in the circle, that is because of the fringe pattern obtained due to the air gap between the instrument base and the optical flat, that is shown in the circle. Then one more fringe pattern we can see, that is because of the air gap between top of the gauge and the optical flat, that is shown by this rectangle. Okay, now in this fringe set of the fringes, you consider a pair of fringes chosen anywhere in the middle of the fringe system. So you consider any two fringes, one fringe because of the instrument base and one fringe because of the gauge surface, top of the gauge surface. So you consider which are adjacent to each other. So we can see this is one the fringe which is corresponding to this circle, a line in the circle, that is called as a pith fringe, corresponding to the base of the instrument. It is the pith fringe. Okay, then there is one more. You can see, now you can come to this rectangle. In this rectangle, you choose the one fringe, again that should be dark fringe. Okay, so that fringe corresponds to the fringe of the gauge fringe due to the air gap between gauge top and the optical flat. So that is referred as a qth fringe. It is the qth fringe. This is the pith fringe, this is the qth fringe. So the fringe of the qth fringe is displaced by distance a from the pith fringe. Okay, so this distance between pith fringe and qth fringe is nothing but a. Okay, so we can now we can say that if you want to find out this distance, say AC. Okay, so this distance AC can be, what is distance AC? AC is the distance, it is the air gap between point C and A. So if we find out how many adjacent fringes are there, isn't it? How we know that how to find out any height, h is equal to n lambda by 2, where n is the number of adjacent fringes. So if we can find out the number of adjacent fringes corresponding to this height AC, we can easily find out this height AC. So we can say that because it is the distance AC, it is related to point A and C. So A is a point on this instrument base. So for the instrument base, we have considered the pith fringe, but that is not up to point A. So we can find out the fringe corresponding to point A as pith fringe plus this much distance. Okay, so this distance is expressed in terms of B as A by B, isn't it? This distance from here to here is nothing but expressed in terms of the fringe spacing of the instrument base, isn't it? So it is A by B. So it is the A by pith fringe, isn't it? This is a pith fringe. So if you take the distance from here to here, it will be P plus A by bth fringe, isn't it? So n corresponding to this point A is P plus A by B. So we can easily find out this distance AC. So distance AC is nothing but P plus A by B into lambda by 2, n lambda by 2. So here in this case n is nothing but P plus A by B. Okay, so how it is coming? So it is a P plus A by B, A by B. So this distance is nothing but A by bth fringe, isn't it? And so total distance is P plus A by bth fringe. So that is the fringe corresponding to point A, distance height between point A and C. So distance AC is nothing but P plus A by B lambda by 2, where lambda is the wavelength, isn't it? Then if we found out this distance AC, remember that our objective is to find out the distance AB. We have to find out the distance AB, but AB is equal to what? AB is nothing but AC minus BC. AC is the height between the bottom surface of the base and the bottom of the optical plate. So AC we have found out AC is P plus A by B lambda by 2. Then we can find out the distance BC also. So distance BC is nothing but it is the height because of the air gap between bottom of the optical flat and the top of the gauge plate. So what is the fringe corresponding to this point B? It is qth fringe, isn't it? This qth fringe is corresponding to the surface of the top of the gauge. So distance BC will be decided by qth fringe. So distance BC is equal to Q into lambda by 2. So that is going here. Distance BC is equal to Q into lambda by 2. Okay. So we have found out distance AC. We have found out distance BC. So we can find out the length of this gauge AB. So AB is equal to AC minus BC. Both value have been found out. So L is equal to P plus A by B lambda by 2 minus Q lambda by 2. So that will be equal to lambda by 2 into P minus Q plus F. P plus F. So L, you can write this, you can replace this P minus Q as a N, isn't it? Because so L is equal to lambda by 2 into capital N plus F, where N is what? N is the difference of the fringes. So that will be a whole number, and F is nothing but it is the relative displacement of say fringes because of the air gap between gauge and the air gap between air gap between gauge and optical flat, and air gap between optical flat and the gauge table surface. So you can easily find out this distance. So in this way we can calculate the length of the gauge. So with this whatever we have discussed, that is written over here, that same explanation is there, so that we can easily find out. The last portion in this section is a laser interferometry. So many times this question is asked, that is what is a laser interferometry. So this because of this interference I have taken this as the last portion. So many times this question is asked that write a short note on the laser interferometer. So this question is asked for 6 marks, 8 marks. So similar to the principle of interference of the light, in that case the source of the light used was a laser in whatever interferometers we have seen, that is NPL, flatness, gauge length interferometer, there everywhere the the source of the light was a monochromatic source of the light, or mercury, cadmium, krypton 86. Now in this case, the instead of using that source of the light, here the source of the light used is a laser beam. We have already seen the laser itself has some advantages, so that's why laser beam is used. So now we'll see how this interferometer works, or how the measurements are taken. Now if you look at this schematic diagram of the laser interferometer, a laser meter as shown in the figure, it consists of basically 3 units are there. So this is a 1 unit, this is the 2nd unit, and this is the 3rd unit. So all these 3 units are shown by say bold rectangles. So this is called as a sensor unit S, then 2nd unit, that is a reflector unit R, and 3rd is a control and display unit. Okay, 3 units are there. Now we'll see one by one what is included in each unit. So in this say sensor unit, as you can see, the sensor unit consists of there is a fixed there is a source of the light denoted by the laser beam. Then after that there is a collimating lens. Okay, after that collimating lens, there is a beam splitter. We, for producing the interference fringes, we always require 2 waves, isn't it? So one wave is split into 2 waves. Okay, so there is a beam splitter. Then there is a fixed mirror. So you can see this is a mirror D and mirror E. So this is mirror D, mirror E. These are called as a fixed mirrors, and photoelectric cell is there. Okay, so this is the photoelectric cell, that is called as F. So all these things, okay, laser, collimating lens, then beam splitter, mirrors D and E, and photoelectric cells, all these instruments are included in the sensor unit, that is unit number 1. Okay, first unit. Then here in the 2nd unit there is only one prism is there, and in 3rd unit there is a pulse counter and digital display unit denoted by G and H. So helium neon laser is commonly used as the source of the light, that is helium neon laser. The wavelength of this laser is 0.6328 microns. 0.6328 microns. Now beam splitter divides the laser into 2 parts. Okay, now out of these 2 parts, one part passes through the beam splitter after internal reflection from the prismatic reflector at A and B reaches the mirror D. So you can see this, whatever laser is say following here, so that is gets divided into 2 parts. So one part is going from here, it goes to the reflector unit. So in the reflector unit, this is one prism is there, so there will be internal reflection. So reflection will take place at point A and B, and then it will go to the fixed mirror D. Okay, so this is a fully silvered mirror again. So from mirror B there will be again reflection will be there. So after being reflected from D, it travels back in this fashion, here to here, and again it will come to the beam splitter, where a portion of it is directed to photoelectric cells. So whatever is a reflected light is there, that is directed in this on this photoelectric cell F. Then the other part of the laser beams moves directly from beam splitter to the fixed mirror E. So one part has after internal reflection has come here, other part of the laser beams moves directly from this beam splitter to the mirror E, and it comes back to the photoelectric cell F. So it goes from here, and again it gets reflected from mirror E, and it again comes to the photoelectric cell F. Now we know that the portion of the path length of this portion is kept constant, isn't it? The path length is kept constant. Now whatever is this reflector unit is there, so this unless so when the object is stationary, when the reflector unit is stationary, this path length remains constant, whereas the reflector unit is attached to the object, this entire reflector unit is attached to the object whose displacement is to be measured. We want to measure some displacement, okay? So that displacement, if you want to measure the displacement, so you just attach the reflector unit to this to the object whose displacement is to be measured. Now any displacement of the reflector unit leads to change in the path length of the portion that passes through the reflector. So initially when the reflector unit was constant, the path length of the waves, that was constant, but as the reflector unit gets moved along with the object whose displacement is to be measured, the path length also changes, isn't it? The path length also changes, and this leads to interference. We have already seen that whenever there is a change in the path length or path difference is there, then the interference will occur, and this leads to the interference when the two parts rejoin at the photoelectric cell. So one part is getting reflected from mirror D, that is getting joined at photoelectric cell, and another part is reflecting from point E, that is from another mirror E. Okay, so the intensity of the light which is falling on this photoelectric cell, that varies according to this path difference of the two portions. Okay, so the photoelectric cell, the intensity of the photoelectric cell which is falling on the falling here, that is the function of the path difference made by the two different waves. Okay, so the displacement of this reflector unit results into a number of pulses to be generated by the photoelectric cell. So as the reflector unit moves, the photoelectric cell generates some pulses. So these pulses are counted here. So this is the third unit, control and display unit. So pulse counter is there. So every time the photoelectric cell generates a pulse, that pulse is counted by this pulse counter. Okay, and which is located in this control and display unit, and this whatever pulses counted electronically, that is converted to give a digital display. Okay, so the digital display of this pulse counter is shown in this digital display unit. Okay, so we can easily count, so number of pulses can be correlated with this displacement, because we can, if you take the example here, so a pulse will be generated for each 0.3164 micron displacement. So for the helium, this is say applicable only for helium neon laser. So for helium neon laser, whatever discussion is taking place, that is for helium neon laser. So helium neon laser, a pulse will be produced for each 0.3164 micron displacement. Okay, so this is the least displacement that can be measured. So whatever pulses are generated, then that can be counted, and if you multiply multiply that count of pulses with 0.3164, that value will be the value of the displacement of the reflector unit. Okay, and we can easily find out that displacement. So this was concerned as far as the unit number 5 was concerned. So with this we have ended the unit number unit number this was related to unit number 3. So we'll stop here.